After the catastrophic events of Numidium and the Tower Crisis, Nirn's instability reached an unprecedented level. The fragmentation of the towers, the uncontrolled magical energy, and the attempt to create a new tower had left Tamriel vulnerable like never before. Paarthurnax, the wise voice of ages past, has appeared before Emperor Auron Yolvig and the Nerevarine, and presents what could be a glimmer of hope not only for the Empire, but for all life on Nirn. He talks about the Kalpa, which would be a great era of time, a cosmic cycle of creation and destruction that encompasses the birth, life, and death of a world, and ends in a period of chaos known as the Dawn Age, which precedes the creation of the next Kalpa. The defeat of Alduin by Emperor Auron's father was enough to permanently or momentarily prevent the end of all things. But time takes its toll. What they could be experiencing at that moment would be precisely the end of a Kalpa. But there was still one thing in question. As soon as the Elder Scrolls were created, one of them, the Elder Scroll of Destiny, was fragmented into two halves by mysterious forces and wills, unknown even to Paarthurnax. This division was not arbitrary. It had a hidden and sacred purpose. Only when united could these two parts fulfill their true function, to correct the false collapse of a great Kalpa. This could have been the big moment for the Elder Scroll of Destiny to be used, but a nagging question arose: where could its parts be? One of them was still in Tamriel, though by coincidence or fate, it had been lost during ancient Akaviri invasions. Rumors swirled that half might have been taken to the dark eastern continent, shrouded in mystery and unknown dangers. The other half remained in Yokuda, but there was no guarantee that it still existed. Perhaps it had been lost when much of the continent sank into the waters of oblivion. Even in the face of uncertainty, there was no time to waste. Action needed to be immediate, and a contingency plan was drawn up, especially since Daedrus lurked in the darkness. Emperor Auron Yolvig, backed by the Empire's former alliance with Hammerfell, would set out for Yokuda, conducting a reconnaissance operation. His mission was clear: to establish contact with the few, enigmatic peoples who might still live there, having isolated themselves from the rest of the world after the fall of their continent. There, perhaps, lay the first half of the Elder Scroll of Destiny. Meanwhile, the Nerevarine, a veteran of ages past and knowledgeable in the ways of Akavir, would undertake the mission of crossing the Eastern Sea. His goal was to deliberate a possible alliance with the enigmatic Akaviri races, a people feared and respected for their martial prowess and ancient mysticism. There, according to long-held suspicions, might lie the other half of the Elder Scroll. In Tamriel, Paarthurnax and the Elder Council would remain vigilant, ready to sustain the Empire in the face of any instability. And indeed, it would not be long before the greatest crisis of all erupted, a threat capable of consuming Nirn completely. The Nerevarine departed Morrowind, while Emperor Auron Yolvig set sail from Hammerfell. Neither of them truly knew what they would find in such distant lands. Akavir and Yokuda were more myth than reality. Arriving in Akavir, the Nerevarine found a continent torn apart by eternal chaos. The Kamal, snow demons, lay frozen during the winter, but when the summer heat arrived, they awoke in fury and marched against the neighboring peoples, especially the Tangmo. In the past, they had even crossed the sea, bringing war to Tamriel itself. The Tangmo, on the other hand, were a monkey people with a generous and innocent spirit. But this gentleness hid an indomitable ferocity. Centuries of attempted enslavement by the other races of Akavir had forged warriors capable of rising into great armies whenever their freedom was threatened. The Kapo Tun, the legendary dragon tigers, dreamed of becoming the true dragons of Akavir. Proud and imposing, they maintained an ancient rivalry with the Seishi, the Serpent Men. In that moment of crisis, they had joined forces with the Tangmo against the Kamal, a fragile but necessary balance for their resistance. The Tsayeshi, sinister and unfathomable, were the terror of the continent. Called the Serpent People, they ruled through cunning, swords, and an insatiable hunger for power. They were hostile to everything and everyone, and legend held that they were responsible for the extinction of mankind in Akavir, either devouring them or condemning them to eternal servitude. Surrounded by ancient and implacable forces, the Nerevarine found himself vulnerable, for in Akavir, even the air seemed to conspire against outsiders. For the alliance to be possible, he would need to choose his words carefully, or be devoured by the hostility of this dark continent. The Nerevarine heads toward the domains of the Ka-Po-Tun, now ruled by the distant heir of Toshraka, the legendary tiger who once dreamed of becoming a dragon. The reception, marked by distrust and caution, does not surprise the hero of Morrowind. He knew that in Akavir, trust was not given, but earned. Before the Council of Dragon Tigers, the Nerevarine raises his voice and, in a speech imbued with the power of his own legend, summons not only the Ka-Po-Tun, but all the peoples of Akavir to heed the call of Tamriel. At first, his plea seemed too bold to be taken seriously, but memories of the shattered sky, as the Akaviri called the phenomenon of sudden night followed by day, echoed like an unmistakable omen. They knew the fabric of reality had been wounded, and the Nerevarine spoke with the authority of one who had spanned the ages. But not everyone was willing to listen. The Kamal, demonic ice lords, and the Saiski, immortal serpents who dream of dominating the entire Earth, were driven into a war frenzy by this cosmic event. The disruption of the Celestial Order had inflamed them with fear and ambition, leading them to brutal attacks against Tangmo and Ka-Po-Tun. Thus, the Nerevarine swore a solemn oath. He would aid the Ka-Po-Tun and Tangmo in resisting the onslaught of the aggressive races, and in return, he demanded the unbreakable promise that they would march unitedly to the side of Tamriel when the time came. The pact was sealed in blood and fire, and the battle for Akavir's survival began to unfold across the snowy fields and eastern jungles. Fulfilling their oath, the Kapotun and the Tangmo agree to aid Tamriel under the banner of the Nerevarine. Now, with the Sayeshi domain subjugated, the Nerevarine is guided by visions to an ancient temple long buried beneath the ruins of Akavir. Its walls, despite the passage of time, still bear enigmatic symbols reminiscent of the iconography of the Blades of Tamriel, as if a secret link has united the two continents since forgotten ages. Entering the main chamber, shrouded in broken columns and inscriptions in a dead language, an invisible force seemed to weigh heavily on the air, a silence that was not empty, but charged with power. In the center rested a black stone altar, cracked by time, where a golden glow emerged between the crevices. There, the Nerevarine found what no mortal dared dream of, a shattered fragment of an elder scroll still pulsing as if alive, emanating echoes of forbidden knowledge. As his hand touched the artifact, visions of untold futures and wars yet to be fought flooded his mind, nearly tearing at his sanity. And yet, he remained steadfast. With the fragment in hand and the certainty that his journey was not over, the Nerevarine gathered his Akaviri warriors, rose as bearer of an ancient truth, and marched back to Tamriel, not only with an allied army, but with the weight of a destiny that echoed through eternity itself. Across Tamriel, disturbing signs began to spread across the heavens and lands. Mages were plagued by prophetic visions and feverish dreams they could not decipher. Magical rifts appeared like burning scars in the fabric of reality, opening passages to unknown dimensions and closing as quickly as they appeared. At first glance, they seemed mere arcane distortions, but the wisest feared they were omens of something far greater, something beyond mortal comprehension. In Yakuta, or what was left of it, Emperor Oren Yolvig crossed that desert forgotten by the world, camping night after night with his entourage. Days of marching amidst absolute silence, finding nothing but ruins eroded by time and lands scorched by the sea. No trace of civilization, no flame of life. Yakuta was no longer a continent, it was a colossal tomb. A scar opened in the heart of Nirn. No temples, no houses, no fortresses, only the silence of a land swallowed by water and time. Of the Yokudan's former glory, nothing remained but drowned ruins and forgotten ashes. The few who escaped, torn apart by tragedy, crossed the sea and built in Tamriel what is now Hammerfell. For Emperor Oren, this was almost a suicide mission, and an unnecessary one. With few supplies, the only way was to head for the ships to return home. Just as even the most loyal soldiers were accepting failure, the wind shifted. A low, almost lamenting song echoed from the mountains. The sound of sea bells, of chains clanging against invisible hulls. And then they appeared. A forgotten people, walking the sands like shadows of the past and hidden in the sea and mountains, the last Ansei. They were not kings nor generals, but survivors, spiritual warriors who chose not to follow their brethren to Tamriel. They became seafaring nomads, eternal navigators, living among broken islands, shattered mountains, and ruined coasts. Their bodies bore the scars of centuries, and their eyes carried the pale glow of the Shehai, the spiritual sword. Their leader stood before the Emperor, an elder marked with body marks that recounted Yakuta's own fall. He knew what Oren sought and wanted to help them. Carrying an ancient, partially rolled-up scroll, its luster seemingly unfading. He explained in a firm, solemn voice that this object was not merely an artifact, but what they called the Keeper of Knowledge, the lost half of the Elder Scroll of Destiny. He revealed that the scroll could not be read by just anyone. Only those truly prepared could unlock its secrets without suffering consequences. The power of time, destiny, and the very essence of Nirn rested within. The leader warned that any attempt to read the scroll without preparation would cause visions of fragmented dimensions, temporal distortions, and spiritual exhaustion. However, with the right wisdom, it could guide the world back from the brink of collapse and halt the catastrophe that threatened the Kalpa. To deliver the scroll, the Ansei demanded that the emperor promise to protect the seas and the surviving peoples of Yokuda, preventing future incursions from Akavir. Thus, Orn Yolvig received the scroll, understanding that his duty was to preserve it and transport it back to the heart of the empire. There, he would meet the Nerevarine. Though he remained uncertain about the success of his allies' mission to Akavir, each step carried the tension of a destiny that could decide the future of Nirn. Thus, the essential pieces were already in place on the chessboard of Nirn's destiny, and now its world depended on the union of those capable of wielding the power of the Elder Scroll of Destiny wisely. Across Tamriel, suspicions soon turned to terrifying certainty. Oblivion portals, like those that had terrorized the world during the Oblivion Crisis, were once again appearing amidst the devastated lands. Mehrunes Dagon sought to exploit every flaw and instability left by the towers, determined to inflict a final blow of chaos. His purpose was clear and absolute: to wreak utter destruction upon Nirn, extinguishing all that dared remain. Meanwhile, the dark currents of Cold Harbor emerged from rifts scattered throughout Nirn. Molag Bal watched with interest as the world weakened, ready to exploit any breach. Both Daedra sought revenge for past defeats, but they were not allies. Quite the opposite. While Mehrunes Dagon yearned for utter destruction, Molag Bal desired subjugation and domination. Tamriel's scattered forces might perhaps try to exploit the tension among the Daedra themselves, but this strategy would not spare them the horror of all-out war. As war consumed Tamriel, Emperor Orn Yolvig landed in High Rock, instilling courage and renewing the spirit of his armies in the face of the Daedra threat. Meanwhile, in the distant eastern lands, the Nerevarine emerged with the mighty allied army of Akavir, bringing with them the strength and discipline of peoples few mortals had dared to encounter for centuries. At first it seemed simple. Unite the pieces of the Elder Scroll of Destiny, read it, and restore balance. But the reality was quite different. Geographically, the heroes found themselves on opposite ends of the continent, separated by a vast, burning land teeming with enemies determined to thwart their mission. Each step forward would require colossal battles, strategic maneuvers, and courage beyond mortal limits. Before any hope of redemption could be realized, the dark armies would need to be defeated, or Tamriel would fall forever. The allies finally meet, and for a brief moment, a sigh of relief sweeps across the battlefield. With steady hands, they piece together the Elder Scroll of Destiny and read it. But for a moment, nothing happens. Despair threatens to overwhelm them. Doubt hangs heavy over their heads, and it seems all their efforts have been in vain. Then, slowly, the air around them grows lighter, charged with an energy that transcends the mortal world. A golden aura envelops the Nerevarine and Orin Yolviig. Above them appears Akatosh, the god of time himself, summoned through the power of the Elder Scroll. With a majestic gesture, he banishes the Daedras, restores the shattered towers, and restores balance to Nirn. But the price is inescapable. Orin remembers the words of the Yonsei leader and, with determination, accepts his fate. He allows himself to be taken by Akatosh, alongside the Nerevarine, joining the eternal flow of time. Balance is finally restored, but the heroes who brought it about will now remain one with Akatosh, just as the Dragonborn before them, becoming part of his very essence. Emperor Orin Yolviig and the Nerevarine departed, now blessed with Akatosh's eternal blessing. Tamriel had lost its leaders, but the world no longer needed them as it once did. The Nerevarine had cemented the alliance with Akavir, ensuring a lasting peace between the peoples of Tamriel and the distant continent. The Emperor had revealed Yokuda to the world once again, and its people were welcomed into Hammerfell, reinstating ancient glories and forgotten cultures. Nirn breathed in harmony, united as one people. And though their leaders were gone, the people's hearts were not filled with sadness. On the contrary, the memory of Orin and the Nerevarine radiated strength, courage, and hope. Every citizen felt within themselves the legacy of heroism and sacrifice, and the spirit of Tamriel blossomed with joy, confidence, and optimism. Everyone was a hero now. For the first time in ages, the world seemed truly whole. Akatosh guide you, my friend.